not one of those women would have been considered qualified to be an astronaut back in the 60s and early 70s. Okay, not one of them, despite all of their distinctions. So, we have had a vast change. The astronaut program, the people that are flying in space are now much more diverse than they were before, and that's a very healthy thing. And every one of them is an inspiration to me personally. But the other part that has changed is that behind the scenes, you see the astronauts a lot. You don't always see all of the other people. And the truth of the matter is, every one of these astronauts flies on the backs of tens of thousands of people. Okay? People that are doing tracking, people that are doing mathematics, people that are running computer software, people that are designing the spacecraft themselves, people that are making the suits. There's thousands of jobs that are involved in taking an astronaut into space. And, opportunities are there. And at the time that I was working in the space program, there were very, very, very few women that were in any kind of operational or technical roles. Most of the women were in secretarial roles, things like that. That too has changed. If you look at the mission control centers these days for the flight, you'll see that there are women flight controllers, there are women even being head of the operations, and there are also women in other levels that you don't see in those many, many jobs. We still don't have enough women as far as I'm concerned. One of the things that has gone down rather than up is that at the time that I was working in the program, about 36% of the computer programmers in the United States were women, and that percentage has dropped rather than increased. It's now about 18 or 19%, which is unfortunate. I hope that, all of you will consider going into technical roles or in other roles. I mean, there's lots of other roles. There are artists in space and other kinds of things as well. But you don't have to fly physically to be flying with these programs. I mean, you can be an analog astronaut, so to speak, in terms of helping other people go into space.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Lovely to see that change you were talking about right here on stage today. Wonderful. So, now on to Nicole. So Nicole Stott worked for NASA for 27 years, including as a crew member on both the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle. And Nicole will be signing her book, Back to Earth, What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet and Our Mission to Protect It, after this event today. Nicole, like Poppy, you have a background in engineering and have worked in many different roles for NASA. But what technology from the space industry do you think has made the biggest impact in life here on Earth?
Wow, that's like getting asked the question, what was your favorite thing about going to space? It's really difficult to answer because I think our lives are impacted in so many ways that we just don't even think about on a daily basis, from the technology that's either happening around us from space or that it's in my pocket, that extra appendage we have, our smartphones. And for this conversation, I think I'll go there to the communications technology that's developed over time. And a lot of it that came from the need to speak to Charlie and his spacecraft on the other side of the moon, and that's a pretty incredible thing for me even to think about right now, is this idea of speaking to somebody on the other side of the moon or on the moon or orbiting the moon. And the fact that we can communicate that way, I think, is really significant. But I think the result of it, the connection that we have to each other through that, is what's really the most important. The way we can communicate with each other here on the planet in our own local communities, but on the other side of Earth, and not even think about it really now. It's just something we can do. The access to information that we unless you had the World Book Encyclopedia that was updated, over time, you just didn't have that. I think that's a really important thing to have come from it all. And my hope through that connection, those relationships that we can establish through that connection, is that the idea of the interconnectivity of everything will spring from that as well. So hopefully that's an acceptable answer.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. And now makes me feel very guilty that I often don't pick up the phone when my mum calls me. So that's not great. Thank you so much. Lovely. So Commander Susan Colerain is an engineer and former astronaut who has served 20 years in the Navy, paving the way for women along the way. She's flown more than 3,000 flight hours in over 30 different aircraft. And actually, my question, I'd like to start with a quote from you, which is that you said, "Live your dream, anyone can become an astronaut." So what are we really looking for the astronauts of tomorrow? Because one of them might be sat here right now.
Well, I'm going to use a lot of words that start with the letter C. We're going to start with curiosity. How many of you have Lego sets that you've mixed up in a whole bunch of boxes and you build different things than what it was supposed to be? You guys are curious. How many of you are generally happy people, cheerful people, another C? Cheerful. You like to laugh and run and play and you're happy. Okay, that's 2. How about capable? How many of you do fairly well at school and don't cry every time you have a math test? Capable. What about confident? How many of you are confident to overcome an obstacle that might be put in your way? All right, that's another C. Those of you that raised your hand for every one of those letter C's, you guys could be astronauts. I hope to see you walking on the moon or the surface of Mars one day.
And if you do become astronauts, just remember where you decided that you would become an astronaut, right? And then maybe one day we'll be interviewing you here on the stage here in the Airbags, yeah? Thank you. Okay, so where we are. So Dr. Sian Proctor, as well as finding time to be an astronaut, is also an avid science communicator, a former NASA education outreach officer, and a science demonstration expert on television. There is such an expansion in the science industries, such as commercial spaceflight. I just wondered where you see the future of this generation in their careers in STEM, and what can we do to get them there?
To follow on what Susan was saying, when we're thinking about all of these different C's, curiosity, confidence, and things like that, having been a community college professor for over 20 years, one of the things that I've seen with my students and I challenge them on is, don't think of yourself as being labeled into a career, like being an astronaut or being a fighter pilot or being as my case, a geoscientist. What you should be thinking about, particularly for the commercial industry and what we're going to need for the future, is we need problem solvers, detectives, Earth detectives, Mars detectives. And so if you can think of what question or what problem you want to solve, and so maybe you want to take on, pollution in the oceans, or you want to take on, lunar regolith and how it can be used as building materials. When you think of a question that you can solve as your career, what that does is it opens you up to all of the different disciplines that you need to be able to learn, to be able to solve that problem, so that you become a problem solver, you become a detective, you become an investigator of the mysteries of the universe instead of being labeled one thing. And so for all of you out there that you're thinking about, what do I want to do when I get older? Think of it in terms of what problem do I want to solve? And for those of you that might be seasoned, it's not too late. Seasoned individuals to take on those same challenges of what problem do I want to work on right now at this stage in my life? And what's great about it is in this digital technology world where we have information and open educational resources, you can learn so much just by YouTube and Google about a lot of the problems that we are trying to solve, and with that curiosity and that creativity, imagination, determination, engineering, coding, all of these things, you could be one of the people that solves one of those wicked problems that we have out there.
Wow, Wow, what an amazing set of advice you guys are getting. And although maybe it turns out it's not too late for me either, right? Thank you so much. So, Dr. Seon-Yi is South Korea's first and only astronaut, advisor and leader in several spaceflight businesses, and worldwide lecturer with a passion for STEM learning. So, what was the first public reaction to your spaceflight in South Korea? And do you feel a responsibility for inspiring the next generation of South Korean astronauts?
Yeah, of course. I actually joking about, and then I didn't know what's the reaction in Korea because I was in space. But actually, it was really honored and also feel a huge responsibility on my shoulder because thinking about your own restriction about your career when you were kids, because when I was a kid in Korea, we don't have even sci-fi movie in Korea that much. And whenever you think about the space and astronaut, especially like Apollo mission, it's not our thing when I was a kid because all tall, big, kind of Western people's thing. I cannot find any woman and any Asian in the NASA TVs or any kind of channel. But when I was up there and then have a broadcast to the Korean TV, and then a lot of Korean girls and Korean people think, oh, even Asian can do that. Even the people look like me can do that. And then they even never thought like that, even if they kind of recognize it, but they limited it itself. And then I observed the same thing in the golfer because most of the professional golfers are Western people, but at some point, one of the Korean female became a #1 of the round, and a lot of Korean girls start playing golfing. And then one of the figure skater can the gold medalist, and they think, oh, even Asian can do the figure skating. So I really feel happy that some kids in Korea, oh, maybe I can try. So my motto is I really want to be the person who living in the next door, not the person who were born specially. Because if she can do, why not I can do? And then one of the biggest responsibility of mine as the first Korean astronaut, I'm so honored to be the first Korean astronaut, but I don't want to be the last. I really want to have a second and third and fourth and 100th and 200th. And I hope a lot of Asian kids, not only in Korea, but also other countries with an outgo, hopefully they dream to be an astronaut in the future based on the curiosity and based on the passion and all that kind of thing. Yeah, we talked about that. Charlie said he doesn't want to be the youngest moonwalker anymore, so he really want to make another moonwalker. So I don't want to be the first anymore, only anymore. I really want to have a second and third. That's my huge responsibility.
Okay. I think you're all sitting here as inspirations to everyone here that's in the audience, and maybe one day you will inspire someone here in this audience to be an inspiration for somebody else. So fantastic, thank you so much. So lastly, we have Naoki Yamazaki is a former astronaut with the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency and flight engineer and NASA mission specialist. Naoki, like many others here this afternoon, you followed on in your own impressive career in spaceflight by going on to inspire others. Who or what was your biggest inspiration in your career, and why was that so inspiring to you? Or why were they so inspiring to you?
Yeah, first of all, I'm so pleased to be here together with you. Thank you so much. Like Soyeon, when I was a small kid, there were no Japanese astronauts yet. So I didn't imagine becoming an astronaut when I was a kid. But when I had an opportunity to study in the United States as an exchange student, I met so many people, and one of them are so charming lady who was over 70 years old, and she was a helicopter pilot, and she was active at that time as well. And she told me, well, it's so much fun to fly in a helicopter, so why not you? And I was so inspired by her words, and I was so encouraged. So I applied for an astronaut, but for the first time, I failed. I was not selected. And on my second trial, I got selected. And I know so many colleagues who tried many, many times. So I just want to, tell you, don't limit yourself by just what you see right now. There are so many possibilities ahead of you. which you don't imagine right now. So thank you so much.
Lovely, thank you so much. Thank you. So that's the end of the pre-written questions. So it is now time for the hard questions, okay? And those questions are going to come from all of you here in the audience. So we have some microphones at the back of the auditorium. So we have one on this side, if my visitor experience colleagues could give me a wave from that side of the room. So if you head up there, if you're on this side of the room, and then on the other side, if we can have a wave up there, that's where we also have a microphone. So if you would like to ask a question, then please do make your way to one of the sides and we'll put you in a queue and then we'll ask you in turn as you get up there. While you're heading up there, I will ask one other question, and this is for all of you, really, while everyone's deciding what questions. Come on, I want some more hard-hitting questions, okay? Something hard. So my question to you while everyone's going up there is, was there a moment in your career where you thought, this is it, I've made it, or this is it, I've done what I wanted to do, and I just wondered what that moment was?
I know mine.
Yeah.
It was definitely Splashdown when we came back after the Inspiration 4 mission, and we successfully splashed down, and all our main parachutes opened, and always a good thing to see the parachutes open, and just knowing that we came together as the first all-civilian mission to orbit. And we did it successfully, and that me as out of the spacecraft, I fulfilled my role there, and hopefully inspiring other women and girls of color to want to go off and become pilots of spacecrafts.
That is pretty amazing. I've done it.
For me, it's, each step of the way has been a success, and I haven't reached it yet. I'm still looking forward to that. But really, honestly, every time you climb a mountain or a ladder, you need to look for the next one to climb. And so, I flew my first airplane. I got my private pilot's license. I landed an airplane on an aircraft carrier. I launched off into space. I had children. They're still all living. I've written a book, so every step of the way, there's some other goal that I want to reach out for. And so hopefully that'll be the way it is until I'm no longer sitting here, I'm hoping there's always something else that I'm going to say, ooh, I've made it, now what?
Yes, that would be great, wouldn't it? You can't just have one, I've done it, right? No, got to be loads, got to be striving for more. We have one more and then we'll go to our questions.
Yeah, actually, I just keep thinking what was that moment, and then today I got to know, and then I think about that moment after my flight actually, and one of my colleagues, and then he was the station commander and then also Soyuz commander on the way back, Yuri Malenchenko. And during whole flight, whenever I have communication with the MCC, he always put the headset on me and then turn on the camera, turn on the power on me, and he just tested it and then give it to the microphone to me. I just thought like he's a gentleman action. But after whole flight over, he just came to me and then asked me to have a private conversation and then told me, sorry. So I said, for what? And he said, because I didn't trust you as an astronaut during whole flight. That's because I helped you a lot and over helped. But on the way back, we had a ballistic reentry, a lot of things happened, and I tried to help him as a commander, and then I found out some smoke's coming in, but it's not smoke, it's more like a vapor because of the frozen tube. And then I told him at the very first time he didn't trust me, and I told, I'm the PhD. I'm always working with the liquid oxygen in my lab, so please trust me. And Yuri asked me, name of your mom, can you swear? Name of your God, can you swear? But finally, he just trusts me and then turned on the power, but we didn't have explosion. It means it's not a smoke, it's kind of vapor. And he told me, you helped me a lot. Now I got to know you are a doctor and you are a real astronaut. I'm so sorry that I couldn't trust you. And at that time, so I made it. I did it. And then finally, he recognized me as a colleague at the end of my flight. So that was really exciting. And he doesn't have to actually, but he became brave enough to tell me and then confess me. That was an amazing moment actually during my career.
Wow. What a moment. Wow. Okay, right. I think we're going to throw over to these questions. We've got quite a few, so I think we'll start over in this corner over here. Do you want to let us know your name and then what your question is?
I'm Alan, and my question is, well, I was trying to find a question that hasn't already been asked before, so it's a bit weird.
We're all weird.
Yeah. No weird questions, just good ones.
Well, when I cut my nails, the nails kind of like ping across the room. So I was just wondering that if you cut your nails in space, how would you like stop it from pinging across the room?
Very good. So if you cut your nails in space, how do you stop it from pinging across the room? I hope when they ping across the room at home, you pick them up afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to fill this one?
Well, if it's okay. It's a great question because it's not just your nails, right? It's hair. I mean, we would cut hair once a month on the space station, right? So even in training, we talked about this because can you imagine if you cut your hair and all of those little hairs floating around and you breathed them in or got it in your eyes or it got into the equipment, it would be really bad. Or if you're clipping those nails that are pinging all around, they're not going to ping and drop to the floor. They're going to ping and float all around you again. So again, you're worried about them getting in your eyes or breathing them in or your crewmate breathing in your nails, which they would not be happy about. So in training, we learned that you either need, if you're going to do something like that, you either need to have the hose of a vacuum right by you to like suck it up right as it's happening, or you need to go over really close to, just like in your air conditioning system at home, you have the air that blows out and then you have the place where the air goes in and then recycles through the system again. So it's kind of sucking the air in. You need to go over there and clip your nails really close to that and then pick them off of there and put them in the trash can. Yeah, everything floats.
It's the things that they never tell you about being an astronaut, okay? Things they never tell you. Thank you very much. I feel like we're getting to the truth now. This is good. Well done, everyone. We're going to switch over to this side. Just your name and then your question, please.
Hi, my name is Damian. I have also quite a weird question, but you as astronauts, you are the people who were invested by governments, by private companies to actually represent us as humanity in space. So you are the direct witnesses of the change of the space industry through the years. So I would like to ask you, what do you think our future will look like when we go to Mars to actually stay there? How do you think the economy would work there? And what you as astronauts would love to see on Mars when we go there to stay?
Okay, so what will it look like when we get to Mars? What do you think it will look like? And then, yeah.
I think we know what Mars is going to look like. We've already had a lot of rovers up there and taking pictures and sampling the surface. It's the trip to Mars, and once you get there, and the trip home, that's going to be a lot different than Apollo or Artemis. Mars is in my mind, an order of magnitude 10 times harder than a trip to the moon. You're going to have depending on your propulsion system, 3 to 6 months to get there. You're going to be isolated. There's no help. I mean, if something breaks, you got to fix it or change it out. So the planning for a Mars trip is very, very difficult. Do you have a doctor on board? What happens if you have serious medical problems? Then the crew is going to be exposed to cosmic radiation, like we were on the moon, but 3 or 4 days is okay, but 6 months is a little bit different trouble. So the planning to get to Mars and to work on Mars is going to be a lot more difficult, I believe, than just a trip back to the moon. A trip to the moon, we're going to have people in a permanent station on the moon through Artemis, but I think we'll cycle crews back and forth like we do on space station. But Mars, that's it, buddy. You're on your own. And you've got to be able to plan and handle all of that stuff. So to develop those systems that work and you're confident in is going to be a major hurdle, in my opinion.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll switch over to over there. I can see someone. Do you want to let us know your name and then what your question is?
I'm Henry, and is it hot in space?
Thank you very much for your question, Henry. So Henry was asking, is it hot in space?
I thank you for the question. It's a very good one. Inside the spaceship, it's, air conditioning is working for 24 hours, so you can set the temperature at your own preference. So it's just comfortable. But if you go outside the spaceship, it's different. It's a very harsh environment. So minus 120 degrees Celsius to plus 120 degrees Celsius, it changes. So without spacesuit, you cannot survive. So it's so hot and so cold both in outer space.
Let me talk about temperature on the moon for just a moment. We were in Apollo, you were always there in daylight. So from sunrise to sunset on the moon is 2 weeks. And when we landed, we had a 15-degree sun angle, and the temperature was probably on the surface. There's no air on the moon, so you can't measure air temperatures, and there's none. But the surface does get hotter as the sun shines on it, and the higher the sun gets, the hotter the surface gets. But for instance, when we landed, we had a temperature of about 30 degrees centigrade average on the surface. When we left, it was over 100 degrees centigrade. But you're not affected by that in the spacesuit. In the spacesuit, outside, what you're worried about is the body heat. And you can get very, very hot working in a spacesuit. So your cooling system, we called it a liquid cool garment. And as it works, it removes the body heat, takes that heat to the life support system, and there was a system up there that would just expose this water and heat that was in your body, it would in your suit, and expose it to the vacuum, and it would flash off into space. So the most critical part in a spacewalk, I think, is in a moonwalk, is the cooling system inside your spacesuit to keep your temperature regulated. And ours was very efficient, and I'm sure the shuttle astronauts and the space station astronauts that do EVAs have very similar type of thing. So you don't really worry about surface temperature of outside temperature. But I did notice one time I picked up a aluminum structure that contained an experiment, and I could feel the heat as that thing had been in the sun for 3 days. You could feel the heat from that system radiate into your gloves, and you didn't want to hold on to it too long because it was getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So you can feel that heat if you grab a metal object.
I love that segue. Let's just talk about the moon. Yeah, that's just yeah. Love that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Does that answer your question, Henry?
Yes.
Thank you. Henry, do you think that maybe because you've listened to some of these people today, you might think about becoming an astronaut?
No.
That is a very honest answer, Henry. Maybe you could just be mission control, yeah? Now I'm getting into the awkward questions for the audience now.
Let me make a comment about mission control. Poppy was in mission control as a technician, engineer. On the Apollo program, every flight had a problem. And there's a film out called Mission Control, The Unsung Heroes of Apollo. And on every flight, they save the day from disaster or from mission incompletion or mission termination. So you, as astronauts in space, you really depended on the help and the expertise that Mission Control gave you. Without their help, I wouldn't have landed on the moon. We had such a serious problem. They're going to send us home. But they figured it out. Took them 6 hours, but they figured it out. And I got an experience of my life because of the help and the team in Mission Control.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Henry. We're going to move across over to this side again. Do you want to say your name and let us know what your question is?
My name is James, and my question is, how do you keep fit in space?
So that was James with how do you keep fit in space? Who's going to take it? No.
That's a great question, because not only are you in space and there's no like big gym or anything, and you can't go outside and run and play and do things that you can do here on Earth, but because of the weightlessness that you see astronauts floating, they're weightless, your heart doesn't work hard in space because there's no gravity pulling the blood down, and it's not having to fight to get blood into your head. So your heart gets lazy and weak very quickly in space if you don't exercise it. So the astronauts are required to exercise aerobically every day. And here on Earth, you might go for a run or ride a bicycle or go swimming. And so what are you going to do in space? And our mission had a bicycle that was strapped to the ground, and we had a seatbelt on our bicycle. And because we're going so fast around the world, we go around the world every 90 minutes. And so one day I decided I'm going to be one of the only people in the world that can say they rode a bicycle all the way around the world. And I think we've had astronauts who have run around the world, that have run a marathon in space. But anyways, you exercise in space by using the aerobic equipment that's on board, and also elastic bands that you can use. It's kind of like lifting weight to keep your muscles from getting weak.
And can I add to that as well? So when you have the opportunity to live for months in like on the space station, or when we go back to the moon and have a permanent settlement there, and certainly when we go on to Mars and are in a reduced gravity environment there, on the space station, we learn the lessons from space shuttle missions, and we kept the bike. So there's still a bike on board the space station that you could set the resistance on. And then there's a treadmill that it's really kind of funny to think about running on a treadmill in space where, you know, if you imagine running, you're just going to float up off the treadmill. So we have this harness where you strap yourself down and you can load it up to whatever weight you want to be able to run on a treadmill. And then we also have this really cool resistive exercise device that allows you to do all the major muscle group exercises that you would in the gym down here. And on our daily space station schedule, it's 2 hours a day for exercise. And that's a mix of both the aerobic, you know, the running or on the bicycle, and also the resistive exercise. And it's really cool because astronauts are coming home from 6 months or more on the space station with like significantly or insignificant bone loss, insignificant muscle mass loss. So your muscle's not going away because we can exercise for 2 hours on the space station. And actually, I came back in better shape than I was before I went, because who has 2 hours a day, you know, to exercise down here? So it works.
I assume there's also a lot of training before you go into space, exercise-wise, yeah, is part of your... Do you have to do 2 hours a day every day before you go up? No. Can you imagine being like...
No time for that.
No time.
No time for that. No, you're training in simulators all the time.
Which is exercise in itself. Thank you very much for your question, James. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you so much. We're gonna pop over to the other side over, what's your question over there?
Hi, my name's George, and my question is, do you think that there's life on Mars?
That's George, and George would like to know if you think there is life on Mars.
I say no.
I think that we may find some microbial evidence, what's been left over. Not life that exists now, but the evidence of potential microbial life in the past, when Mars was very wet. But we find that in the subsurface, so not at the surface because of the radiation profile there, but if, right now Perseverance is digging down into the ground and creating, collecting samples. And then hopefully those samples will give us a better idea when we bring them back here to Earth and analyze them. And then, of course, when we eventually get humans on Mars, they'll be able to do a lot of investigation into, is there any evidence of ancient life that existed back when Mars was a wet planet?
So George, take that question a little bit further. And what do you think about life out in the universe somewhere? How many of you think there's life in the universe somewhere? Yeah, right? Because all the conditions that made life here on Earth, naturally they would have happened someplace else, right? I think so. I bet everybody on this panel here thinks there's life somewhere out there, right? Yeah, maybe? No?
No?
Charlie does not. Yeah. Okay, yes. All the women think so.
But Charlie is firm in his no. Thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna switch to the other side of the room now. Hello.
Hello, my name's Ollie. Thank you all for coming here to talk to this lovely lot today. My question is, so going from simulation to doing the real thing, what's it like? Like, I know there's a difference because you're in space, but actually going from sitting in a simulator to then going to sitting in the actual shuttle, or, for example, with you, Charlie, going from the LLRV to actually flying the lunar module on the moon, so what is that feeling like, going from sim to real?
So Ollie would like to know what the difference is, or what it feels like. You've done lots of simulations before you go into space, but then what it's like when you actually are there. What's the difference? What's that feeling like?
Fortunately for the ones that had the biggest surprises, I guess, was the first humans being to land, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. But before they landed, we were unsure of what the surface of the moon was, the bearing surface, the bearing strength of the moon. Some scientists say, 4 billion years, all the dust collected on the moon, you're going to sneak out of sight. Mm-hmm. So was that true? Well, we couldn't take a chance, so we sent unmanned spacecraft to land on the moon. The ones that were the most successful were the surveyors. They landed and they had the same footprint as on the surface that a lunar module would have on the surface. And when they turned on their camera, they were sitting right on top of the surface. And so the bearing strength of the moon was very, very good. So we knew that when we landed, we weren't going to sink out of sight in 40 feet of dust. But when we got there, you discovered that the surface was very, very powdery, very, very fine. But the moon had a very good bearing strength. And so as you stepped on it, you never sank in more than just a few centimeters. But when you drilled into it, I did a 3-meter drill, and when we pulled it back out, it was still very, very fine grain stuff all the way to the bottom of the drill. So it had this ability to interlock. It gave you great bearing strength. So we ended up one of the advantages, I guess, of being on the moon, with the bearing strength, you left your footprints everywhere. And we drove a car about, let's see, it was 25 kilometers total for us. And you never worried about getting lost on the moon because everywhere you went, you left your tracks. So you had to turn around and just follow your tracks back. It was, and I think on Mars it'd be the same way. You're going to not sink out. We know that we can land on Mars and leave tracks in this Martian soils. That's about it.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it? Because people have been to the moon now, we now know that when we step onto that surface, we're not going to sink in. But yeah, before then, you didn't know. You didn't know. We hadn't been there. Am I allowed to do a bit of a follow-up to Poppy from this question? Because Charlie talked about the amazing work that Mission Control did and that things kept going wrong in Apollo. In Mission Control and in the background, how did you simulate problems that you thought might happen, or did any of them come up?
Well, actually, the preparation for flights with all of the simulations, as compared to the flights almost seem easy most of the time. I mean, it's sort of surprising. You're sitting there and you're going, I'm sort of bored because no disaster has happened this minute. Because they have, a group of people that do nothing but dream up terrible things to happen so they can test you during all these simulations. Of course, we have had, every flight has had problems, okay? But there have been some flights that have had really bad problems, namely Apollo 13. Dealing with that, some of that have been dealt with in terms of simulation. The use of the descent propulsion system, for example, to bring them back rather than the main system, was simulated. We were very familiar with doing that, but there were new problems that had to be solved with the environmental problem. Some of y'all are many too young to remember what happened on that, but the back end of the spacecraft blew up is what happened and halfway to the moon, okay? But they didn't know exactly what had happened. They knew there was a large bang. And it wasn't until they were actually re-entering and separated and saw what the spacecraft looked like that they knew how bad that big bang was. But during 11, for example, for me, the mission was pretty boring, because everything was going right. It's like your moments of acute panic and then many moments of acute boredom.
Well, like everybody here that's been in simulations and training, at Apollo, we had the crew in Florida in the simulator. We were tied electronically with the mission control in Houston, and we practiced every day these various situations. And there was a group of people called Sim Soup, and their job was to kill you, to get a person to see what you're going to do with this problem, and they had to insert these problems into the mission to, if you were landing, something was going to go wrong, and how will you overcome it? And if we did it right, they would give us a congratulations. If you didn't do it right, you had a big debriefing, and this is where you made a mistake. This is where you made a mistake. And so you learned all through the simulations the idiosyncrasies of the spacecraft and how to overcome these problems. And this integration of the teams and mission control and the crew was invaluable, in my opinion.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you very much for your question, Ollie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We've got someone up there? Yes, we do. Lovely.
I'm Claire, and I'm here as a mum of a space-mad son. I'm less knowledgeable about space, and I just wanted to ask if you could help me understand why spending millions and millions and millions of pounds going into space is good value when there's so much on Earth that money could be spent on disease, environmental damage, poverty, that sort of thing.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, honestly, I could talk all day about the answer to this question. I think if you know, we've got a lot of representation here across, you know, different times within the human spaceflight programs. And if I look at what Charlie and Poppy were doing as part of Apollo, if I look at Shuttle and Space Station, Soyuz, Dragon, you know, what's going on now, time frame, there's not one of those programs where I don't think we can just all out say that everything about it in one way or another was certainly about exploring space and doing science in space and learning about how humans behave and react to those environments. But everything about it in one way or another also had to do with improving life on Earth. And I went to the space station the first time, that was back in 2009. There certainly is like the adventure part of traveling in space. Don't get me wrong, I highly recommend it from that standpoint too. It is incredible the way our bodies manage to adapt to these extreme environments. The view of our planet out the window and just I think the impact that can have on your life and how you can come back as just a crew member, not a passenger of this spaceship that we're all on, this planet. But I went with a little bit of a question of, is it really all about improving life on Earth? I had a 7-year-old son when I launched to space the first time. And for me, it was really important to know that it was more than the adventure of flying in space. And so even before flying, I was investigating all of the time. Okay, this is science that we're doing. Yeah, that might help us go to Mars, but what's it doing to help us here on Earth? There was not a single thing that I dealt with in the 3 months I was on the space station didn't have that dual purpose or the sole purpose of improving life on Earth. And I know that sounds a little like kumbaya, a little high level, but from, you know, I'm not pointing out any details of the particular things we're doing. But I believe that the mission that Cyan just had with the Inspiration 4 crew last year, everything about that in one way or another is going to help us improve life on Earth. And all that we're looking to do as we go back to the moon, on to Mars, is in one way or another going to do the same thing. And I'm really hopeful that a lot of you in this room will be taking on that challenge and that mission for us. And in the rambling mode that I'm in right now, you know, we talk about solving the biggest problems here on Earth. I love the way you guys put this out here, as we need to all be even in our seasoned years, developing this problem-solving skill within ourselves, using both sides of our brains, our whole brains, to solve our most challenging problems. And when we think about on a planet, what's happening to us right now, just our environment, our planetary spaceship's life support system, all of the information that we need to understand what's happening to our planet is coming to us in the best way from space. There's no better way to measure the vital signs of what's happening on Earth than the way we're getting that information from space and then taking it and using it here to solve those problems.
I want to add something as well. One of the things to keep in mind is look over the course of our history, and you can't look at any great exploratory effort and say that it didn't produce incredible wonders. And some of these wonders it took a while to recognize, like, you know, when they first, you know, had exploration of the Arctic, okay? They saw a lot of ice, but they didn't realize what else was there. So we're going to be launching, I think at the end of the month, Psyche, right? They're going to explore, it's not crewed, but there's going to be an exploration of an asteroid. We may find new elements, new materials that don't exist on this planet. And who knows what wonders that might be in terms of new materials. You know, the environment in space is very different, being weightless. We may find new methods of building materials, constructing materials that you cannot construct on this planet. We may discover medicines, okay, that can be combined and produced in space that could solve incredible problems. It's impossible to know in advance what you're going to discover when you make a great exploration. But if you look at our past history, you can guarantee there will be some whopper of big, important discoveries.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your question, Claire. Gonna move back to this side of the room.
Hi, I'm Adam. I have a question specifically for Dr. Yi, if that's okay. You said that there was a lot of discrimination when you were, against a female Korean astronaut. So how did you overcome that? How did you beat it?
First of all, I didn't feel like it's a discrimination. I thought they are so nice to me. Yeah, so I didn't want to be kind of buried under those kind of discrimination and desperate feeling, because based on my own experience, especially when I was in engineering school, all my friends said that there is a lot of discrimination, but I didn't want to take it personally. I just thought, like, if I do my best, if the people recognize what I'm doing and how far I can do it, and then I believe they might recognize it. So in Russia also, at some point, some instructor told me, I believe you will not fly. But even if you will fly, if you just smile, and then some other Russian cosmonaut will help you as a hero. And then that was really huge shock. But I always try to tell them, I'm not here as a woman. I'm here as a cosmonaut. So, я не женщина, я cosmonaut. And but don't want to offend them, because I just try to translate and interpret, because they didn't have enough experience working with women before. So they just feel strange and they just feel awkward. So I just want to be the good first impression for them. Oh, working with a woman is not bad, as I think. So yeah, I don't think they just hate me. I just think they feel awkward, because as I working with the engineering school, 120 classmates in my mechanical engineering department, there were only 2 girls among the 120. But thinking about that, and then 10, 20 boys, they failed in the class, nobody recognized it. But one of the 2 girls failed it, then professor said half of the girls failed. But just one person, but that's the portion, that's the kind of distorted data. So I always talking with my friends and then another girl in my program, let's be the good example and let's impress other guys, or also women can do it. And then that might be our kind of burden on my shoulder and in my cross, but I think that also great, because if the 2 of the women are successful, it means 100% of the women, right? So I always try to see that way.
And what a fantastic group of women we have here that did it. They did it, yeah. Thank you very much. That was a great question. Thank you. I'll switch over to this side. Hello.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Anushka. I'm so delighted to be here. I've been coming to the Science Museum for nearly 40 years, and I think I'm the eldest person looking down this epic line, still dreaming about being an astronaut. So thank you so much for being here today. It means a lot. And my question to you is, if there was one thing that could be designed or engineered to make your experience better in space for you as a human, what would it be and why?
So one thing that could be designed or made to have made their experiences in space better for them. Is there anything? So was there anything that you wish had been designed or invented that would have made your spaceflight better for you?
I think I'll couch this with the fact that I loved the food. in space. And on the space station, what was so cool is that as an international space station, we had food from all of the different partner agencies. So, and my very favorite food was the Japanese curries. Thank you very much. They were delicious. And our families were able to send us some, they had these crew care packages, and there's, if you haven't discovered it, it's called Artisan Chocolates. It's over in Sloane Square, and they make this dark chocolate covered ginger that is just amazing. So my husband was able to send some of that to me. So I really enjoyed the food. Nice variety, tasted good. It's very different to the food we eat down here. You don't have a plate full of food because it would all float off. So you're eating with your long-handled spoon out of bags of food and add water to it. It all tasted good. There is so much work to be done on the nutritional side of food, on the logistics side of food. You think about it now, we're in low Earth orbit on a space station where you can resupply food to the space station. When we go off on the trip that Charlie was describing to Mars, 3, 6, maybe 9 months en route to Mars, you can't have that. So you're gonna have to revolutionize the way we think about food. It can't be what we're doing right now. We just couldn't support that. So is it the little sponge you add water to, or the pill you take, or what is it that's gonna somehow psychologically satisfy you food-wise, but also give you something that's satisfying as what we know of as food too. So I would throw that out here to the kids in the audience. Man, there is huge opportunity from the food and nutrition side for going to space.
Let me add one thing. Yeah, I totally agree with Nicole. We recycle water on board the space station right now, and we of course circulate atmosphere, absorbing carbon dioxide and making it oxygen by chemical reaction. But food, we have to rely on the supply from the ground. So we need more sustainable space agriculture in space. And also right now, we cannot wash our clothes in space. We keep wearing it for a couple of days, and if it get dirty, and we have to throw them away. So we need more.
Nayoka, I had one pair
of
khaki pants for 3 months in space.
Here we go. Like this. So we need more, improvement in the laundry as well.
Back at Apollo, I thought we were flying state-of-the-art spacecraft. And it was well designed, but we had no internet, no voice, no transmission, no keyboards that we could transmit messages to to our kids or our parents, anybody like that. We talked to mission control. And so it was very isolated. And I look back at our computer, and our Apollo computer had 80K memory. You can't even start up your cell phone on 80K memory.